All right, so we're diving deep into the world of Chihuahuas today.
Sounds fun.
You know, you always tell me how much you love dogs, especially the small breeds.
I do. It's something about those big personalities packed into those tiny bodies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you mentioned wanting to understand, like, what makes each breed unique, even within the same uh, family, right?
Yeah, I do.
So we're going to be focusing on Chihuahuas today, taking a look at all the cool stuff from this YouTube video. 8 types of Chihuahua. It's by Animal Digest.
Okay.
So picture this. You're thinking about getting a Chihuahua.
Okay, yeah.
You're probably picturing like that classic tiny dog that fits
Yeah.
in your purse, right?
Right.
But there's actually way more to these little guys than meets the eye.
Oh, I bet.
It's like a whole mini universe of like dog diversity, all within this one breed.
Wow. Okay, so where do we start?
Well, let's just get those Chihuahua basics out of the way. You know, they're officially recognized as a toy breed by the American Kennel Club, big personalities.
Right? Right.
And their history goes way back.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're talking ancient history, like way before Columbus even set sail. Pre-Columbian civilizations, they've been around for centuries.
Yeah, crazy, right?
It is.
It wasn't until 1908 that the AKC officially recognized them. And we can't forget, of course, that they're known as the smallest dog breed.
Small but mighty.
Exactly. Okay, but here's where it gets interesting. The video breaks down Chihuahuas into different types.
Oh, okay.
2 official types, and then 6 more that are, like, well-known but not officially recognized.
Interesting.
So let's start with the official ones. First up, we've got the short-haired Chihuahua,
Okay.
sometimes called smooth coat.
Makes sense.
And then there's the long-haired Chihuahua, also known as the rough coat. Pretty straightforward names, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. So what makes them different besides the obvious hair length?
Well, the short-haired has that super smooth and glossy coat, doesn't need a ton of grooming,
That's good.
which makes sense because they originally come from a hot climate like Mexico.
Right, yeah.
But here's something that might surprise you. They can get sunburned.
Really?
Yeah. Gotta think about doggy sunscreen for these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that short coat, they can actually get cold pretty easily, too. Might even need a little sweater for those chilly walks.
Ah, a little sweater.
I know, right? All right, now let's move on to those long-haired Chihuahuas. Longer, obviously, but does that mean they're a total grooming nightmare?
Well, not really. They do need regular brushing, but it's not as intense as some other long-haired breeds.
Oh, okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah, and here's something you might not expect. They shed less than the short-haired.
No way.
It's true. And another thing to keep in mind is that it takes like 2 years for their full coat to actually come in. So you got to be a little patient with these fluffy pups.
So you don't see their full fluffiness right away.
Not quite.
All right, so that's the official types, short-haired and long-haired.
Got it.
Now we're venturing into those unofficial types. And we're starting with the teacup Chihuahua, sometimes called the micro Chihuahua.
Oh, I've heard of those.
The name kind of gives it away, doesn't it?
Yeah. They're supposed to be super tiny, right?
Exactly. Even smaller than your average Chihuahua.
Yeah.
Think of a dog that actually fits in a teacup.
That's so small.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And as cute as that sounds, this is where we need to talk about responsible breeding.
Oh, right.
We all love small dogs, but breeding for that super tiny size can actually cause health problems.
Right, I've heard about that.
It's true. We got to think about the ethical side of things.
You're right.
They might be cute, but it's important to be aware of those potential health risks. Okay, next up, we've got another unofficial type, the applehead Chihuahua.
Okay, I think I know what those look like.
It's that classic Chihuahua look, right?
The one everyone pictures.
Exactly. Rounded head, that apple shape. But those adorable big eyes, those can actually be a problem.
Oh, no, really?
Appleheads are more likely to have eye issues, like ingrown eyelashes.
Wow, because of their eyes.
Yep. And another thing is they often have a malera.
A malera? What's that?
It's basically a soft spot on the top of their head.
Oh, wow.
Makes them more sensitive to head injuries.
Oh,
So extra care is needed with this type.
got it.
So as cute as they are, you got to be a little more careful with appleheads.
Yeah, definitely.
Next, we've got a type that looks quite different, the deerhead Chihuahua. I'm guessing the name has to do with how they look.
I was just thinking that.
So instead of that round applehead, these guys have a longer nose and longer limbs too. Kind of a young deer.
Hence the name.
Exactly. Now here's a question. Are deerhead Chihuahuas allowed in dog shows?
Good question.
Well, the AKC breed standard really emphasizes that rounded applehead. So deerheads actually don't qualify.
Oh, wow. So even though they're chihuahuas, they don't fit the mold.
Yep. And it makes you wonder, like, how these breed standards influence our ideas about dogs. But on the bright side, deer heads are often considered to be healthier than apple heads because of that different head shape.
That makes sense.
Okay, we've got apple head, we've got deer head. What's next?
Let's see. The pear-head Chihuahua.
Pear head.
Yeah, it's actually considered the least desirable head shape.
Oh, wow. So what does a pear head even look like?
It's kind of like a mix between the apple head and the deer head. Not as round as the apple head, but not as long as the deer head. Sort of in between.
Huh. So they don't really fit in either category.
Quite.
Interesting.
Eh.
I wonder if that undesirable label will change, as people become more familiar with this type.
You never know. Things change all the time.
All right, on to the fawn Chihuahua. What's special about this one?
Well, the name comes from their coat color. A light tan, like a baby deer, a fawn. But any type of Chihuahua can be a fawn Chihuahua as long as it has that color.
Oh, okay.
It's more about color than a distinct type.
Got it. So last but not least, we've got the Merle Chihuahua.
Ah, yes, the Merle. Known for their unique coat patterns, lots of spots, and patches of color. They're usually long-haired, but again, it's more about the coat pattern and not a separate type.
So lots of variety in those coats. Makes you realize there's so much more to these Chihuahuas than what we usually think of.
Definitely.
And speaking of what we usually think of, the video mentions the AKC breed standard again. It reminds us that only those apple-headed Chihuahuas, the short-haired and long-haired ones, are the ones that meet the official requirements for shows.
Right.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, how much do these breed standards affect the way we see different types within a breed?
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. It's funny how much our view of dog breeds, gets shaped by what we see in movies and stuff.
Yeah, totally. Like, how often do you see those, classic applehead Chihuahuas in movies?
All the time, they're like the poster child for the breed.
Exactly. So we end up thinking big eyes, tiny nose, that apple-shaped head. But like we talked about, there's actually a lot more variation.
So much.
Those deer heads, for example. Longer noses, just different features. But they're still Chihuahuas just as much as the apple heads.
Right. And it makes you think, who decides what's the official look anyway?
Right. Like we were saying, deer heads aren't recognized by the AKC for shows. But does that really make them less of a Chihuahua?
Not at all. They just don't fit into that one specific image that the AKC decided on. It's interesting to think about how the standards even came about.
Totally. Like, who decided that was the look, And why?
Well, it's a whole thing. Breed standards have changed over time, influenced by, fashion trends and what breeders like, even cultural stuff.
So it's not always about what's best for the dog.
Exactly. Sometimes those looks can actually cause health problems.
Like with those teacup Chihuahuas.
Exactly. Breeding for that extreme size can have consequences. It's like a balancing act. You want to keep the unique parts of a breed, but also make sure the dogs are healthy.
It's tricky. It really struck me while we were getting ready for this, how diverse the Chihuahua breed really is.
Yeah.
We tend to think of them in such a one-dimensional way.
Right. It's like we have this one picture in our heads.
But they come in all shapes and sizes, all those colors.
So true.
Like those Merle Chihuahuas with their awesome coat patterns. It's like having a little piece of art running around your house.
I love that.
And even within those apple heads and deer heads, you find all these different personalities. It just shows you have to get to know each dog.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't make assumptions about them just because of their breed,
Totally. Each dog is unique. That's part of what makes them so special.
Okay, so let's talk about some health things with Chihuahuas. We already mentioned those teacup Chihuahuas and how their size can be a problem.
Yeah. When they're that tiny, you naturally worry about them getting hurt.
Exactly. And it's not just physical injuries. Their size can put them at risk for certain medical conditions, too.
Oh, right. Like what kinds of things?
Well, for instance, they're more prone to hypoglycemia. That's low blood sugar.
Oh, okay.
Their little bodies just don't have much energy stored up.
That makes sense.
So regular meals are super important.
Definitely. And it's good to know the signs of hypoglycemia. Things like lethargy, weakness, maybe trembling, sometimes even seizures in really bad cases.
That's scary.
It can be, yeah.
So we get hypoglycemia. Anything else to watch out for with Chihuahuas in general?
Well, dental problems are pretty common, too.
Oh, yeah, I've heard their teeth can be too big for their mouths.
Sometimes that's the case. They can end up with overcrowded teeth, leads to plaque, gum disease, sometimes even tooth loss if you don't take care of it.
Oh, regular dental care is key.
Super important. Brushing, dental chews, those professional cleanings can make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely.
And then there's the whole thing about their sensitive stomachs.
It's like those picky eaters we hear about.
Exactly. They can be prone to vomiting and diarrhea and sometimes food allergies.
That's rough.
It can be.
What can you do about that?
The best thing is a high-quality diet that's easy to digest and definitely no table scraps.
Oh, yeah, that's always tempting, but no good for the pups.
Nope. It often takes a bit of trial and error to figure out the best food. Working with your vet can really help.
So it sounds like we got to be extra careful with these little guys to keep them healthy.
Yeah, a little extra care goes a long way.
Are there any health concerns that are more specific to certain types of Chihuahuas?
Well, we can't forget about those apple heads.
Right, with those big eyes and that molera.
Yeah, they can cause problems.
Like what?
Well, those eyes, as cute as they are, they're really prone to injuries and infections.
Like scratches or ulcers or even ingrown eyelashes?
Mm-hmm. So you got to be really careful, avoid any roughhousing, keep those eyes clean.
Okay, so eye protection is important for those apple heads. And what about that molera? How serious of a problem is that?
It's something to be aware of for sure. That soft spot makes them more vulnerable to head injuries.
So no head bumps for these guys.
Right. Just got to be extra careful with them, handle them gently, and make sure they're supervised around other dogs and kids.
Got it. Sounds like they need a little extra TLC.
They do.
But it's important to remember, not every Chihuahua is going to have all these health problems.
Oh, that's super important. These are just potential risks. Most Chihuahuas can live long, healthy lives with good care.
Good to hear.
Regular vet checkups, good food, all that makes a big difference.
Being a responsible owner, that's a big part of it too.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of living a long time, did you know Chihuahuas are actually known for their longevity?
Really?
Yeah. They're one of the longest living dog breeds. Average lifespan is like 14 to 16 years.
Wow.
So with proper care, these little guys can be your buddy for a long time.
That's pretty awesome. I think we got to talk about that loyalty they're famous for too. It's like they have these huge hearts packed into those little bodies.
It's so true. They really bond with their people. And, despite that reputation for being yappy, they're actually really smart.
Oh, yeah.
And very trainable.
So they're more than just lap dogs.
Way more. They love to learn new things. And of course, we've been talking about all the different kinds there are. There's a Chihuahua out there for everyone.
It really seems like there is.
But no matter what kind you like, you've got to do your research. Find a good breeder and be prepared for a lot of love in a small package.
Sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah.
Now, I want to come back to that question you brought up earlier. If you could, redefine the Chihuahua breed standard,
Right.
what would you focus on and why?
That's a good question. I think for me, I'd prioritize health, temperament, and functionality over everything else.
Let's break that down. When you say health, what do you mean?
Well, I'd want a standard that promotes their well-being and reduces the risk of genetic problems. No more breeding for those extreme traits like we see in teacup Chihuahuas.
So focusing on breeding practices that result in healthy dogs.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What about temperament? What would you look for there?
For me, it's about dogs that are confident, friendly, adaptable. Chihuahuas can have a reputation for being nervous or nippy. I'd rather see more breeding that emphasizes dogs that are well-adjusted.
So good family dogs, basically.
Yeah, dogs that are happy and well-behaved.
Got it. And what about functionality? What does that mean to you?
Well, it's all about the dog's ability to, do the things they were bred for. With Chihuahuas, it was mainly companionship, right? So you wouldn't want to breed traits that make them less suitable as companions.
Like being too fragile or having separation anxiety.
Exactly.
So your ideal breed standard would be more about how they are, not just how they look.
Yeah. It's all about the dog's well-being in the end.
I think that's something we could all agree on.
I hope so. It's really important.
It's awesome to hear your thoughts on this.
Thanks.
It really makes you think about how we can do better for these dogs. So let's leave our listeners with this. What matters most to you in the dogs you love? Is it looks? Or is it about their health, their personality, how they fit into your life? And how can we work together to make sure those breed standards are helping the dogs, not just catering to what we want?
Such a good point.
It's kind of crazy to think how much we've covered, when it comes to Chihuahuas. Like we started with this one basic idea, and now we've got all these different types and all their own unique stories.
It's amazing, right? Like opening a door to a whole new world.
Exactly. And it just goes to show you, every breed, every dog really has a story that's more than just a label.
Absolutely. It's about seeing the individual dog, their
Yeah.
personality, their needs, where they came from, and appreciating all that amazing diversity.